Hi, in this tutorial I will give an overview of Erwin Data Modeler. So what is Erwin Data Modeler? So in this tutorial I will give an overview of this software called Erwin Data Modeler. And Erwin Data Modeler is used for modeling, design and create entity relationship diagrams for your database. And Erwin Data Modeler comes in different paid versions, but you can also request a free trial, and if you are a student you can also apply for the academic edition. So let's go to the home page of Erwin, and then on the Erwin homepage you can go to free trials, and select the Erwin Data Modeler. Then you can start free trial, click on the button, and here you can request a free trial for this software, or you can apply for the academic edition by clicking on this button, and then you just need to fill out the necessary information, your email, your name, country, your university name, your name of the professor, a name of the course that you are going to use this software. So now you have your Erwin Data Modeler software ready to use. Let's start using it. So here you see a basic entity relationship diagram, or also called ER diagram. It consists of different tables. In this simple example we have two tables, one table called book. So here's the name of the table, book, and here's another table called chapter. And in this book table we have different columns. We have book ID, book title and summary, and in this table we have the book ID, which is the so-called primary key for this table. And then in the chapter tables we have different columns like chapter ID, which is the primary key. We have book ID, chapter number, chapter title, etc. And in this case we have also a foreign key which is pointing to this book table. So here the book ID is a primary key, and since this chapter are mentioning the different chapters in a specific book that is listed in this table, we need to have the book ID as a foreign key here. So basically this is the basic principles in relationship databases. We have different tables with different names, and each table needs to have a primary key, and other tables can also have foreign keys like this. So let's start creating this simple example using the Erwin Data Modeler software. So now I have opened the Erwin Data Modeler software. Here you have lots of options, but basically you just select this one, create new model, and then you have different options here. You can choose between logical and physical model, or a combination of logical and physical model. Here you select what kind of database systems that you're going to use. I select SQL Server, and here you select the version. I just select the latest version. And then I select logical and physical model, and then I just click OK. And then we are ready to start creating our database. The first thing I like to do is to set up the page. So then I just right click here and select properties, and then here under page setup you can select page size. If you want to print it, it's okay to put it on a A4 page. And then here you can select orientation, portrait or landscape. I prefer landscape, so then I just select a paper size A4 and landscape, and then click close. And now I'm ready to start creating the different tables. So then here under home entity I just select the entity and click it on my workspace, and then I start entering the name of the table. I can start with a table called book like this, and then I just hit the tab key in order to first enter the primary key, and then I just prefer to use the same name as the table, book, and then ID for the primary key. Then you can enter one or more additional columns. Typically in a book you need to have a book title like this. In order to create more columns, I click just hit the enter key like this, and then I can easily enter more columns. You could have a summary, etc. Yeah. So then I just select it, and then summary, and then hit enter once more and click escape like this. Now I have the first version of my book table. I just put it here on the screen. Then assume you also want to have an author for this specific book. Of course you could here in the book table enter the name of the author, but typically you want to create a new table and then just name it author, and then you enter the primary key, which could be author ID, and then typically author name like this. Typically you also want to have probably an email address, so then email like this. Of course you can add more columns as well, but I just make these basic columns so that author table has author ID as a primary key, and then it has two additional columns, author name and email. Then you may want to have different chapters inside this book, so I can also make a table called chapter like this, and then you could have chapter ID, chapter title, etc. But basically now I have three tables, and now I want to create the relationship between these tables, namely the relationship between the primary keys that I have created and the so-called foreign keys. So then I just select this non-identifying tool. I just choose this one, and then I can click here on the table that has the primary key once, and then I go to the other table where I want to create a foreign key. So then I just click on this one once more, and then you see the author ID was created automatically, and it was defined as a foreign key with these FK letters. And also in the chapter table I want to have a relationship with the book, because I need to know in which book this chapter belongs to. So then I just use the same tool, non-identifying tool, click on the book table which has the book ID as a primary key, and then I go to the chapter and click once more, and then you see the book ID has been created as a foreign key in the chapter table. So basically now I have created a basic database diagram in three tables. I could also create more tables. I can create one more table, that is the publisher who has published the book, then publisher. Then I create a primary key called publisher ID. Then I can have publisher name. Typically I also want to have an email here for so I can contact the publisher like this. So basically now we have four tables, and since the book table has the author ID as the foreign key, it also want to have the publisher ID as a foreign key. So then I just select this non-identifying tool, click on the publisher table, and then on the book table. Then you see the publisher ID has been created as a foreign key in the book table. So now I'm finished with my first draft of my database design, and I have created a simple database with 4 different tables with primary keys, foreign keys, and other columns as well. Next, you want to specify the data types for the different columns, and then here we see we have a logical model which I in now, and then you have physical model which you typically use in order to create the data types for the different columns. So then I select physical model, and then I can right click on one of the tables. I start with the author and then select column properties, and then I get this this editor where I can specify the data type for the different columns. So let's start with the author ID. Typically the primary keys, I prefer those to be an integer, author name, etc. I prefer, of course there are lots of different data types here, but I prefer to use this data type called var_char, which is basically a string with a specific length. In this case I just select 100, so this means I can use up to 100 characters when I specify the author name. Email, I use the same here, var_char 100, like this. Then I can click close, and then do the same for the other tables. Column option, I can also choose the table here on top. Then I don't need to close and open every time. I can just select the specific table here, publisher. So I do the same here, int. For the publisher name, I use just var_char 100. I can just copy it, do the same for the email. Like this. That's the publisher table. Then I can go to the book table. Book ID, I set it to int. Book title, I use var_char 100. Summary, you can use var_char 100 or var_char 1000 or whatever. And then you see the author ID, it's a foreign key to this primary key in the author table, and it has automatically been set to integer. And the same for the publisher ID. So now I'm finished with the book table, and then I go to the chapter table. Chapter ID, I just specify int. Chapter title, I specify var_char 100, and then the book ID has been set to already an integer, since the book ID and the primary key is an integer in the book table. So then I just close, and now I have specified the data types for all my tables. Typically you also may want to see the data types in the diagram here, so then I can just right click, select properties, go to table tab, and then display column data type. I just select this one, click close, and then you see the data types is now visible here in the diagram as well. So the author ID is integer, and then author name and email is var_char 100, and the same for the other tables. If I switch back to logical, you see here we only focus on the logical model. So here the different data types doesn't have any meaning. Here we only focus on the table names and the columns and the primary keys and the foreign keys, while in the physical model you focus on a specific data types, database systems like SQL Server, and then you need to specify specific data types for the different columns like this. I also have some best practice rules I want to tell you about. Here in the different tables I use uppercases for the table names, author, publisher, book, chapter, and in the different columns I use so-called Pascal notation, where I have a uppercase in the beginning, and then the rest of the words are lowercase, and then if there is a new word, then it starts with the uppercase, and then we use lowercase again. So you see in all the columns here I have used this so-called Pascal notation. And as mentioned, for the primary keys I like to use integer like this. And then if you have different text, I use different version of varchar. You could use varchar 10, varchar 50, varchar 100, varchar 1000, depending on how many characters that you need in the different columns. Typically I also want to use or specify so-called identity for the different primary keys, meaning you don't need to insert these primary keys by yourself. It are automatically taken care of by the system if you specify that the primary keys should be so-called identities. So let's see how we can do that. So basically I want all the primary keys to be so-called identities. So then I start with the author table. I just right click, select column properties, and then select the author ID column, go to general, go to SQL Server, and then in the bottom we have something called identity. Then I select generated identity, I select this one, and then we need to have a starting value. This means every time you insert a value in the author table, it will start with 1, and then if you enter a new record, then it will automatically increase with 1. So then you have 1, then next time you will get 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So then it means this primary key will be automatically generated by the system. So that's the author table. Let's do the same for the publisher table. Then I select generated identity is yes, and then starting value 1 and increment by 1, yes, like this. I'll do the same for the book table, yes, 1, 1, and finally for the chapter table as well, 1, 1, like this, and then close. So now all the columns has primary keys that are so-called identities. They start with 1, and then every time you insert a new record it increases by 1, then it gets 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. You may also want to add something called unique constraints. This means typically here in the publisher table you don't want to have 2 publishers that have the same name, so then you can set that this publisher name should be unique. So then assuming you try to enter a new publisher with the same name, you will get an error. So let's see how we can do that. We just select the table, right click, select column properties, and then we go to indexes, and here you see there's already one index for the primary key, so then we need to create one more index for the unique constraints. So then I just select this here, index editor here, and then we have already an index for the primary key. Then I create a new one by clicking the new button here, a new unique index, and then for this one I select the column name, which should then be publisher name. So now this publisher name is set to be unique. This means that you cannot create 2 publishers that have the same name. So then I just click close. You could do the same for some other columns if you needed. Assuming you don't want to have 2 authors with the same name, then you can do the same for the author name. Assuming you don't want to have 2 books with the same name, you can also do the same for the book table, etc. So assuming you don't want to have 2 books with the same name, I can just right click, select column properties, go to indexes, click on the index editor, and then click new unique index, and then select the column, which should be book table in this case, and then click book and close, like this. So now we are basically finished with our database design. We have created the necessary tables with the necessary columns. We have specified identities for the primary keys. We have specified unique for some of the other columns, like the publisher name and the book title. So now the next step would be to create a script that we can use, and so when we have created this script, we can use that script to generate the tables in our database systems, which in my case is SQL Server. So let's start creating a script for our 4 tables. So then I just go to Actions. Make sure that you have selected the physical model and not the logical one. So select the physical one where you have the data types specified, and then you select schema, and then forward engineering schema generation. Just click on the button, and then this wizard will pop up, and then you have different options here that you need to select. So then let's start with the security. We don't need anything here. Of course, there are lots of options here. It depends on you need what you select, which options you select, but I just need to have a simple table script that I want to use in order to generate the tables in my SQL Server database. Under tables, under databases, you have lots of options. Here under schema, you have lots of options. I just remove everything. Typically, you want to focus on this table. So here I want to create a table. I don't want to create procedure and functions, so I remove those. You want to have a table validation on create. So basically that's what you need. Then you go to columns. Typically you want to have a validation on create. You want to have them in physical order. And default create. User data type, we want to have the data types included. So basically that's the selection that you need under columns. And then let's go to view. I don't want to create any view, so I just remove everything. Index, just start by creating, removing everything. Referential integrity, I want to include the primary keys on create. I want to have foreign keys on create. I want to have these unique constraints on create. Trigger, I don't want any triggers, so I just remove everything. Other options, I just remove everything. Of course you can change it later. And then if you think you are satisfied with the different options you have selected, then you can go to preview, and then a preview of the different tables and your script has been generated. So then you see I have table script that are creating the table named author with the different columns. Here you see I have the identity included. I have the primary key, which is this author ID, and here I have the publisher table, which also has identity. It has the primary key, and it has these unique constraints, which this is this publish name that should be unique. And next we have the book table and the book and the columns in the book table. We have book ID, which is set to here, primary key and identity 11. We have the book title that is set to be unique here, and the data type. We have the summary, and then author ID is set to be a foreign key, and the same for the publisher ID. And then finally we have the chapter table, where we have the chapter ID, which is set to be a primary key. We have book title, and then we have book ID, which is set to be a foreign key. So basically this script seems to be okay. Then I can just click on this little disk icon to save it. So then I just click here, save. I just save it on a location on my hard drive. I just created a temporary folder, and then I just name it. I can call it book tables or something .sql. So now I'm saving this script on my hard drive so I can use it later in my database system, which is SQL Server. So then I click just save and OK. And also I want to save my database design model here. So then I just click on File and Save. And I can save it on my hard drive. So I just call it book system or something, and then this design has the ending erwin like this. So I click just save. So now I have everything done here in the erwin data modeler software. So let's go to my SQL Server database and then generate these tables into my database system. So here you see I have the files stored on my hard drive. So here I have the book system.erwin, which is the actual database design in the erwin data modeler software. And then here I have the book tables.sql, which is the tables, the table script. So I can just right click here. I can open it with notepad or something. I just open it with code so you can see the contents of this script. So basically here you see the script that has been generated with these tables, the author table, the publisher table, the book table, and finally the chapter table. So then you see that the script seems to be okay. I just close this one. And now I want to open my database system, which is SQL Server, and then I open the tool called SQL Server Management Studio. This tool are used to manage my database. It makes it possible to insert tables, delete tables, insert data, etc. So then I just select my database. I have a user with a password and click connect. And here you see on the left side I have already lots of databases in my database system. Then I can on databases just right click, create new database. And then I can specify a specific name. I have already created lots of other book databases, so let's create a new one. Book X or whatever. So make sure to specify a proper name, and then when you have found a proper name, just select OK. And then this database should be generated here on the left side. I just click refresh, and then you see this book X has been created. Here you have the tables, which is so far empty. And then I can just right click on my book X, and then here in the menu select new query, and then I go to my file explorer where I have this book table script. I just drag and drop it. I could also of course open it here using the open button. So you see I have the author, the publisher, book, and the chapter. And then basically make sure that you have the proper database selected here, which is in my case the book X. And then I can basically click execute here. And then hopefully you will get the same message as I have, commands completed successfully. And then I can right click here on my database, click refresh, go to tables, and then you see these 4 tables has now been created. I have the author, publisher, book, and chapter. Then basically I can go to the different tables. I can right click on it and click edit top 200 rows. Then I can start entering the data for the different tables. So author name, assuming we have an author called Halvorsen, and then some email address. Something like this, and then I click just enter, and then you see it was generated, and this author ID was automatically generated with the number 1. If I created a new one, author is Elvis, with an email address. And now when I hit enter, you see the author ID will be number 2, etc. like this. I can do the same for the publisher. Edit top 200 rows. Then I just type publisher 1 and I email publisher 1 at internet.com or something, and then you see the publisher ID has been automatically created. Then next we have the book table. I can right click on it, edit top 200 rows. So now, assuming we want to create a book, so then we start with the book table. We can call it SQL database systems or something. Summary could be some text, and then author. Then here you typically need to enter the primary key. So then the first author in the list was Halvorsen, and it has an author ID equals to 1, so then I type 1. And then I created one publisher, publisher 1. It also has a publisher ID 1. So now I can just click enter, and then you see this book has been created in the database. And book ID was automatically created with number 1. Then I can easily create more books, where I specify book title, summary, a specific author ID, and a specific publisher ID. And then finally I can do the same for the chapter table. So then if you remember from the book table, the book ID was in the first book was book ID was 1. So then here in the chapter I just introduction chapter or something, and then here I need to specify the foreign key, which was then 1. Then I can just click on the enter key, and then this chapter was created. The chapter ID was automatically generated with number 1. If I create more chapters, it will be 2, 3, 4, etc. So basically, this is how you start by using Erwin Data Modeler to design and modeling your database. You create the different tables, the different columns, and the data types, etc. And then you generate a table script that you then open in your database system, in my case SQL Server, and then you can easily use that script in order to create the tables, as in this case these 4 tables, and then you're ready to start inserting data into the different tables. Here I have used SQL Server Management Studio to insert some data, and the next step then would be create an application where you actually insert the data from your application, retrieve data from your application, etc. I can also easily use new query in order to retrieve data from the tables here in the SQL Server Management Studio by entering SQL commands. So here I can type select all from book like this, and then click execute, and then I will get all the data in the book table, and same for the author table, etc. So basically this video has shown how you can create your database by starting designing the tables in your Erwin system, and then later create the actual tables in your database system. So let's summarize. So we started by creating our database model or the database design using this Erwin Data Modeler. We was using the academic edition, which is free to use if you are a student. And then the next step was to generate the SQL Table Script using the feature in Erwin Data Modeler. We saved that script on our hard drive. Then finally we opened our database system, which is in my case was SQL Server, and opened the SQL Server Management Studio. Then I opened the table script that was generated and saved on my hard drive, and then I was able to insert these tables into my database system. Then you are ready to start inserting data into your database. You can create additional database features like stored procedures, views, triggers, etc. if needed. That's all. So now are you able by yourself to create this database diagram. It consists of different tables, one for course, student, grades, school, teachers, class, etc. So make sure to practice on your skills in Erwin and in SQL Server by creating this example by yourself. So that's all. So thank you and good luck with your database and your Erwin data modeler software and your SQL Server database. Thank you and goodbye.